I have a little illustration here that kind of shows what we're talking about. Here we go. Inheritance refers to an object that subclasses another and so receives all its powers. Right here. So essentially, a subclass is the object that is inheriting the abilities of the superclass or the parent class. So when we say that our document class subclass is movie clip, we're getting all of the functionality of a movie clip and anything that a movie clip is subclassing as well. You see? Let me show you another little chart here to kind of illustrate that. So the thing that you have to realize is that there's a lot of built-in code already inside of Flash. You can make use of that code in any of your applications, and in fact you have to. So in the case of our document class, it would exist at about the level that we see on the bottom here. Why? Because it is inheriting from movie clip. But if you look at the inheritance chain, as it's called, that is happening behind the scenes, you can see that movie clip is actually extending sprite. Sprite is extending display object container, which is extending interactive object, which is in fact extending display object. At each level of inheritance, more abilities are added. At the display object level, well, it's pretty much what it says. It's the ability to actually show a visual asset on the stage. Interactive object, well, that adds the ability to interact with the object in some way, say via mouse or keyboard. Display object container adds the ability to nest other display objects one inside the other. So if you were to think about how you're doing that inside of the Flash IDE, if you're used to doing it that way, anytime that you would create a movie clip, then go inside of it and put another asset inside of there, you're able to do that because that ability is given by the display object container, which the movie clip is downstream from in the inheritance chain. If we keep going, you see that right after display object container comes sprite, and then sprite is extended by movie clip. So what's the difference between a movie clip and a sprite? Well, there aren't a whole lot of differences. The major difference is that a movie clip has what's called a timeline object. Now that's very recognizable inside of the Flash IDE as a series of keyframes. On those keyframes you can place assets and you can move them around by creating tweens. That is the biggest difference between a movie clip and a sprite. You can almost think of a sprite as a one-frame movie clip. And at the end of it all, we see that our document class is extending movie clip, and so it's inheriting all of those awesome properties. Now, a way that you could check that is by looking at the code hinting that will happen inside of Flash Develop or any good code editor. That is a brief explanation of what inheritance means. Inheritance is used a lot in object-oriented code. There are also other methods such as composition, and in the future we will, as we get past some of the basics, we'll look into some of those more advanced topics. We'll look at when it is good to use inheritance and what the other options are. But in the meantime, I thought what we could do right now is start illustrating a few things about classes themselves. There are a few basics that you need to get down before you go too far into looking at object-oriented theory. Now, one of the core concepts of classes is the idea of functions. We've created one already, public function, project document. We've said that that is called, let me put a little note here. We've said that that particular function is called the constructor because it has the same name as the class. However, you can create as many functions inside of your classes as you wish. Each function should have a particular job to do. So, for instance, we could create a second function here. Let's create public function test display. I'm going to give it a return type of void. Don't worry about what that means right at the moment. Alright. Now, just like we've done inside of the constructor, if we want to test the operation of that function, we could put a little trace in. I do this quite a lot, where I'll actually, test things with traces and then go back and start doing actual visual things with it. It's much faster to work this way. A good principle when you are working in object-oriented development is test early, test often. That's probably true of every language, really. So I'm going to put a little trace here. Testing a public function. And I'll save it. Now, if I were to run my Flash file right now, I'm not going to really see a difference. Actually, to prove that, let's do it. Nothing. See that? The trace is still the same. It still just says I am here. Now the reason for that is that we've just given our class the ability to do something more, but we haven't actually asked it to do that. Excuse me. Okay. So for the next line of code, let's actually ask it to test this function. To do so, we have to create what is called a method call. Doing that is fairly simple. We simply type the name of the method, and you must follow it up with an opening and closing round bracket. Those are very, very significant. If Flash doesn't see those round brackets, then it doesn't really think it's being asked to call a method. It thinks instead that it is looking at a variable. In this case, that would be a big problem. So let's save this, and we'll jump back into Flash. And if we've done things right, then we should see a second message popping up in our output console when we compile the application. And there we have, testing a public function. Alright. So if we go back into Flash Develop, we can see that we now have a very simple function, and we've put an instruction inside of it. We can make that trace something out. Let's do something a little bit more interesting, because this is going to show you how you can start to make use of visual assets inside of your Flash file. So we're going to jump out of the code editor for a moment. Let me just collapse up that properties panel, kind of get it out of the way here. Alright. Flash comes with a bunch of tools that you can use for drawing different objects. So I'm just going to draw a very simple vector object here. Oh man, that looks boring. There. And a little brighter. There we go. Take my selection tool, select the whole thing, and I'm going to hit F8 to convert it into a movie clip. I will give it the name Blue Box. And up to now, everything looks very, very normal. Now, if you're following along here, your little panel here may look more like this. You want to actually select the Advanced tab. Now what we're going to do is not so advanced, but you are going to want to have that expanded so that you can tick off this checkbox right here, which is right beside Export for ActionScript. This is very, very important. Go ahead and give it a check there. Now you're going to see few things happen here. First of all, the class field is going to be filled with the name Blue Box. Secondly, you're going to see base class, flash, display, movie clip. This is important. We're turning that blue box into a movie clip. In reality, what's happening is that Flash, behind the scenes when we compile, is going to create for you a class that is an extension of movie clip. You see? Movie clip is the base class. Blue box will be an extension of movie clip. Now, we've just been talking about what that means. Let's take a look again at our chart. What it means is that blue box now is going to inherit